Hello again, welcome back to another lesson, another video. My name's Shane Cuthbert and you are watching the Change Your Life series. Welcome back, congratulations for being here, for making it this far. We've still got a lot to go, we've got a lot of great stuff to cover, a lot of great stuff to talk about. And I can't wait, okay, to take this journey with you. So thanks again for coming. Let's get stuck into the next lesson. I'd like to show you two examples of two different types of people, two different personality types that are, on the same journey as you, and just briefly look at the differences between what they're doing and the results that they get. Now, if you're someone that can relax very easy, is very open-minded, is very easygoing, can meet new people without a problem, you are good at approaching different situations, different places, meeting different people. You're a bit more open-minded. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more easier for you as you're taking this stuff in because you're going to accept it a lot easier. And it's going to be a lot easier, and you're probably going to find that taking all of this stuff on board and changing is actually going to be a lot quicker for you. You're probably the type of person to be able to watch this video, have a few things click, and things start falling into place right away, okay? You get out there, this afternoon or tomorrow morning, and you're actively, starting to achieve your goals, and you're already starting to change, okay? So really, I guess if I could think of an analogy is if all this course is doing is planting seeds, I guess yours grows a little bit quicker, maybe it's a little bit closer to the surface. It doesn't have to fight so much against the soil and that sort of thing to get to the sun and to get to the water. Whereas maybe with another person, it's a little bit more closed-minded and that things take a little bit more time. They're a lot sort of, their seed is planted. It's still there, but it might take a lot longer for the light and the water to reach it in order for it to grow. So if you're the type of person that's particularly prone to doing a lot of overthinking, you're very over analytical, you're used to concentrating on things deeply, problem solving, worrying, you're a bit stressed. You may be prone to anxiety quite frequently. You, unlike the other example, don't find it easy to relax, okay? You find it quite difficult. You have a personality that doesn't find it very easy to trust people. You avoid social situations. And it takes you a little longer to get to know strangers. And just in general, it takes you a lot longer to process things and really wind down and accept things. Maybe for you grew up in a household where it was very strict and there was a lot of rules. Lots of rules about how and who and what you must be. And you felt terrified to be anything other than what the rules said, what your parents said or your environment around you as a child said that you should be. In that case, there's a whole, extensive list of reasons why it might take you a little bit longer, to learn these things. And, you might need a little bit extra practice to learn these things. Okay, when you've got an open-minded person, they can genuinely sort of approach a situation, hear a point of view or hear something, and it sort of clicks straight away, and they think, oh, okay, yeah, that's great, I get that now, I can do that thing. They're faster learners. They're faster learners because they don't have to get through all of the blockages that a closed-minded person has to get through. So when you're a closed-minded person, usually you've been taught to be a certain way. Over time, you have practiced that problem, you have practiced that skill. So when someone's trying to tell you something, your reaction is to fight against it. It's to argue, it's to debate about that situation. And so, when you're watching these videos and you're thinking about these things, it's just naturally going to take you a little bit longer to pick these things up. And it's important that I share these examples with you, because I don't want you to get discontented, As I said, this is video 10, we're not even, we're pretty close, but we're not even halfway through the series. And you might be thinking or expecting to have some results already. But results do take time, and depending on who you are, they may take more or less time. Okay, and I just think it's important that we look at these examples, because it is very important when you do start having those self-doubt, why haven't I changed already? Why is it so hard? That answers the question basically. Is for some people it's not going to be as easy as it is for others. Okay, and that's just the way it is, because we're all different. We've got different personalities, we've had different upbringings, and there's different barriers and different hurdles getting in the way of our change. Now, here's the irony. The person that finds this course and finds taking all of these things in and learning awareness and self-compassion, the person that struggles with this the most, okay, the person who is really getting, finding this difficult to take on board and to start practicing and learning, for that person, they're probably the person that need this the most. Okay, the more resistant you are to these ideas and these concepts and towards change, the more this is beneficial for you. Because if you can learn that, it's going to really change your whole life. It's going to change your perspective. Sometimes when things are difficult and they're harder, we just definitely, get the most reward from them. If you just had to change a little bit and things are going a little bit better for you, that's great. But if you have to change a lot, if you have to practice a lot, that's going to make, the final sort of, the end of the race, that final lap, the top of the pyramid, it's going to make it feel that much more, gratifying to have reached that, and to have overcome that. When we work harder for things, we're prouder of them. So that's the great irony, is probably that the harder you're finding all of these concepts to take on board, the more necessary it is for you to take on board, but the more, the better results you're going to get from doing so in the end. So you've really just got to have some faith, and some real faith and some real trust moving forward throughout the lessons. I'm going to share with you, a bit of an analogy that I think is great. I think it's going to be beneficial for you. What I'm going to explain is what sort of to do when you're having all of those, sort of negative thoughts that sort of pop into your head, those things that, happen straight away. So you're struggling with something, or you're trying to attempt something for the first time. You've got those thoughts, I can't do this is too hard. We're retraining our brain. We've got to learn to, not only sort of just totally get rid of those thoughts, but what we're going to have to do to start off with is acknowledge that we're having those thoughts, and we're going to have to change them. So it's a little bit like rocking a baby to sleep, okay? So a baby might be, frustrated or something, and it starts crying. So what's happening is it might not necessarily be hungry, it might not actually need food, it might not be tired, might not need anything at all, it's just feeling a bit uncomfortable, and it starts crying. It's important to think about, and just really visualize holding yourself as a baby. Okay, so you're holding this baby and it's crying. So just as, this baby is getting restless and it's crying, that's essentially what's happening within your own mind every time that you have self-doubt or self-judgment or a thought that pops into your mind that isn't necessarily positive. What do you do when that's happening? What is your reaction to that problem? Most people, their first reaction is they're holding the baby, they want it to be quiet, they just want to soothe it, they reach for a pacifier or a dummy, okay? And they pop a dummy in its mouth so it stops crying. Again, that's what we do with ourselves in everyday life. Every time we have those thoughts, we just basically give it a pacifier. We don't actually acknowledge those thoughts, accept that they're there, and have new ones. We just look for a distraction, or we drink a beer, or we do some drugs, or we do some gambling. That's how we deal, when our inner child and our baby is crying. We shut it up, with something else that's not actually helpful. It's actually harmful. So if we looked at the baby, I guess, doing drugs or drinking or something like that is a little bit like just then getting the baby and pulling out, a rattle and shaking it in front of the baby's face and distracting the baby. The reason we distract ourselves with things is so that we can avoid, having to deal with those things, having to think about those things, because they're harmful. We start judging ourselves, but we've learned in previous lessons that that's a negative thing. But it's also something that we have to learn to accept and acknowledge in order to work through it. If we don't do that, we're going to keep distracting ourselves the rest of our lives. We're going to keep doing these problems. We need to learn to face these problems. Okay, we need to learn to not rely on our pacifiers or our rattles. We need to face these things head on, acknowledge them, show ourselves some self-compassion in order to move forward. Another thing people do is they take the baby and they say, okay, here, go to your mum or go to your dad or the grandparents. So let's let somebody else deal with the problem entirely. So not only are you distracting yourself from the problem, but what you're doing is you're just saying, I can't deal with this right now. I'll make it somebody else's responsibility. Okay, so when we're passing the baby away, if we look at that ourselves, we're taking this problem, this thing, and we're not addressing it. We're making it somebody else's problem. It's somebody else's fault. So in that case, we're not dealing with it at all. We're not distracted. We're just completely just disowning it, okay? We're pushing it away. And that's not helpful either. Some people are going to let the baby sit there, for hours, until it stops screaming, and neglect it. And neglecting a baby is not the right thing to do either. Just as neglecting our thoughts and feelings are not right, okay? That's harmful to us. That creates a problem. That's a problem that we're practicing. We deal with those thoughts and those problems in a range of ways, okay? We do things differently depending on the problem and depending on who we are, okay? We deal with things differently. That's just what we do. But very rarely do we actually give the baby what it really needs, okay? Very rarely do we give the baby what it needs. The baby doesn't need to be neglected or distracted or, to shut up. The baby just needs to feel your patience, your presence, your awareness, to know that you're there, that you care for it, that you nurture it, that you protect it. It's safe, it's secure, wants to be held, and rocked and comforted. It's really looking for a response that says, it's okay. It's okay. And as adults in our own personal lives and with our own problems, we're all just looking for, someone to say, it's okay. And you need to learn how to do that for yourself. I'm going to teach you how to do it as best as I can, but we're going to have to practice it. Something that once you learn, you need to learn to be, your own, your own judge, okay? Your own self-judgment, but also self-compassion. So you also need to learn how to love yourself, okay? You need to learn how to do both and create a healthy balance between you as you are now and your inner child, okay? Your inner baby. It's not a bad thing. It's not as though it's unhealthy or unnatural for those thoughts to be there. I mean, they are. It's not something you can throw in the bin. It's not something you can give away. It's not something, you want to shut up. It's something that's perfectly healthy and natural and normal to be there. So we need to act like that. We need to accept those things. What we do all too frequently is react to the reactions instead of responding to the reactions. I want to ask you, what do you do when your own baby, yourself, as a child, gets fidgety or uncomfortable, might start crying, it might be screaming. Okay, how do you react to that? And what I want you to start doing is becoming aware of it and noticing that that's going on. Okay, so not neglecting it. You're noticing and acknowledging that baby is crying, that baby is screaming, that it's uncomfortable. Notice the feeling popping in and being able to react back to that thought, knowing that the way or the thing that you're feeling right now is only going to last, for a small amount of time. Eventually it's going to be okay. It's not going to stay like this forever. This thought or this uncomfortableness or this feeling, it's not there forever. It's just temporary. In general, it's going to be okay. I want you to practice saying that to yourself. We need to stop acting like it's an emergency when we have feelings like it's the end of the world. Oh my God, I feel angry, I feel sad, I feel worried, it's terrible. Quick, I need a distraction, I need a drink, I need a drug or something. We need to stop acting like it's an emergency, like it's the end of the world, because more often than not, it's not. It's just a feeling. Feelings don't kill us. They hurt a little bit, okay? It's not a physical pain, but they can be quite a negative, harmful pain. But they are just feelings, and feelings are there as a direct result of our thoughts. Okay, feelings aren't going to kill us. It's not an emergency. We can and do have the ability to take a step back, to acknowledge that, soothe our own selves, and know that it's going to be okay in the end. It's not life or death when you have, a negative or uncomfortable feeling. Okay, it's really just temporary. We need to give ourselves permission to experience the feeling and let it go. Once we start repeating that process and practicing it, we sort of get bored with them. They stop worrying us as much as they used to. Do you know what I mean? We sort of get tired of them and we get over them. The baby starts to calm down. The baby goes to sleep. I hope you find that way of thinking about the process to be a helpful analogy. Moving forward, when you do think those things, think of yourself as a baby, okay? Kicking and screaming for something, okay? Just really wants to be soothed and nurtured. And you need to learn to do that for yourself. The reality is that this is going to be a lot more challenging for people at first, okay? We've talked about how for some people things are a lot easier than for others, okay? And depending on what type of person you are and where you are at in your journey of change, depends on how you're going to be able to react to this. But at first, for everybody, it's going to be difficult. Maybe more difficult for some, but it's only difficult at the start, okay? That's something that we all share in common is no matter how difficult it is, no matter what sort of level of difficulty you're at, it's difficult for all of us at the start, okay? The first steps are always going to be the hardest. The simplest way to think of the process is that it's all about learning to respond back to the thoughts of self-doubt or feelings of uncertainty when you notice them popping into your mind. Change may be more challenging for some people to learn